As you all know, Liz Truss, well, since leaving office, has been quite a busy person and indeed racking up a lot, and I mean a lot of air miles. And where has she been traveling to, getting all these, air mile points for her airline and whatnot? It has been predominantly to America across the pond. Now, why across the pond? Well, you may remember, of course, Liz Truss, heavily backed by the uh, Institute of Economic Affairs, or the IEA. And as we all know, the IEA is a think tank that is funded by, we don't know. It just gets a lot of really generous donations. People just like the IEA so much they just give it money hand over fist, but we don't know where it comes from. Now, we do know, in a way, from what we have seen sometimes and leaks and bits and pieces, and we know all this comes predominantly from America. It's what we call the dark money trail. It's not the only think tank out there that is receiving these types of, shall we say, monies from America. Mostly from right-wing libertarian think tanks in America who are trying to not only influence American politics, but trying to influence European politics as well. Because the big thing they are after is they want to see Europe ban abortion as well. Because there's nothing worse than if, let's say Donald Trump gets a victory, Trump will come in, he'll put in a federal abortion ban. Well, who knows whether or not it will pass or not. But if they've got the House and the Senate, it will pass. And then what happens? Well, of course, we know what happens. It's already happening. We have continuing stories of women in America who are denied access to abortion, and continuously, again and again and again, bad story after bad story after bad story. Meanwhile, you've got Europe, where we have very good access to not an abortion, but to be honest, well, arguably very good sort of abortion rules throughout all of Europe. You've got even countries like Ireland, which used to have the most restrictive abortion laws in Europe. After a referendum, those went away, and now they're trying to change that because they want to sort of roll back abortion in Europe as well. And it's not just things like that. It's targeting gay rights, trans rights. They want to push a more hard right, libertarian, free market economist. So, of course, Liz Truss, they absolutely love Liz Truss because that's what they sort of wanted to push. And she's been doing a lot of talks. We've covered this. So it turns out now, of course, that Liz Truss has a new friend, or trying to make a new friend. And it wouldn't shock me, by the way. It would not shock me in the slightest. Just as we saw in 2016, where Nigel Farage went over and supported Donald Trump in the running in those big events that he had, the rallies. It wouldn't shock me if you saw Liz Truss at those rallies. But this is what seems to be happening. Liz Truss seems to have a new friend because she's now trying to cozy up to Donald Trump and say, wouldn't Donald Trump be like so good for the world? Just yeah, absolutely not. No way, no how. Donald Trump would not be good. Already his first presidency was really not good. And especially for the world. Yeah, absolutely not. One of the things why Putin is, a lot of people expecting why Putin is still trying to drag this out is he's hoping that there will be a Republican victory and that, Donald Trump will come in and, quote, do a deal. Of course, it will ultimately be in, Russia's favor. And if Ukraine say, no, we're not going to do that, well, Donald Trump will just go, well, no more support, which is why I've said continuously David Lammy needs to be going to the rest of Europe and going, look, if there is a Trump victory, we need to make sure we support Ukraine like never before. Like, let's go wartime production, step it up, boys. Give everything, the weaponry and stuff that Ukraine needs, because we don't know what could happen there if Trump gets a victory on that. China is, of course, another big point. A lot of these free market libertarians, as we've said before, come from this conservative school of thought where, oh, we can just put China back in its box. We don't have to deal with them whatsoever. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. We've yeah, it's worrying. It's very worrying, but it is not surprising that we see this type of stuff coming from Liz Truss, because the exact same groups that back Donald Trump in America are also the exact same groups that back the IEA, and of course have invited Liz Truss to come and speak at their events as well, like the Heritage Foundation. So let's see what Liz Truss had to say about the good for the world that Donald Trump would be. But before we do get into that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation called Buy Me Coffee, where you can all buy me coffee. And of course, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. There's also the Pony Club as well down below, and the YouTube thank you button as well. So let's see what Liz Truss had to say about her new friend, Donald Trump. So, in an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal, Truss has said that she hoped that a Republican will be returned to the White House in 2024, saying that there must be conservative leadership in the US. That is once again bold enough to call out the hostile regimes as evil and a threat. Trump was incredibly buddy, not only with Russia. Some would arguably say that it was because of Trump and his policies that led Putin to feel more emboldened to take this huge risk in going to war with Ukraine and invading them. There is also the big fact with, North Korea. North Korea, Trump did nothing. But, I went and met Kim and we were all excellent. Everything got on. Nothing happened. All it was North Korea got a massive PR boost that they used, and they loved it. Did anything good happen or come out of that? No, absolutely not. Every single time, Trump was played like a fiddle by these regimes, and they knew exactly how to play him. Give him a bit of flattery, promise him a bit of money, on the sidelines, maybe afterwards, we'll do a bit of deals with your companies, etc. They knew exactly how to deal with Trump. So this is, of course, one of the worrying things. One poll aggregator suggests that Trump leads his closest rivals in the Republican primary, Florida Governor DeSantis, by, I believe, 60 points to 12%, notwithstanding the fact that he also faces at least 91 criminal charges. And if he gets caught for anything one of those, well, that's the first time in American history this has ever happened. Raises a lot of questions for that. In an article entitled "The World Again Needs American Leadership," Truss did not name the former president, but she has previously called him, quote, very good and very nice. Trump has returned the favor, saying that when he speaks very highly of the former prime minister. How could he? She was barely in. She was barely in office. Truss, of course, is currently on a visit to Washington, D.C. with the Conservative Friends of Ukraine. And in her article to the Wall Street Journal, she has argued that, quote, too many of us in the Western world have become complacent about the defeat of our communist enemies at the end of the Cold War. Here's the thing. That is very true. A a lot of people did go buddy up to say, oh, Putin is going to bring about this new thing. Democracy has now finally come to Russia. What a wonderful thing it was. Turns out, oh, actually not. And that is, to be honest, a big foreign, talking point. They are technically right about that. However, Truss was probably one of those people. It wouldn't surprise me if you could go back and find her saying how wonderful it is that Putin is in power in Russia. She also then said that in reality, no such victories are permanent. She said the West allowed China to join the World Trade Organization as a developing nation on beneficial terms that it enjoys to this day. So this is always a big talking point, the idea that we treat China as a developing nation. Here's the thing. China is a developing nation. Only, I think, 12% of China. Think about this. China is a massive country, and only 12% of China is actually developed. That is just the reality of China. It has such a massive population and resources that it can still compete heavily against Western countries. And that is not new. That is not new. If you look back through history, China was pretty much always, for quite a long time, until really the Industrial Revolution, at the center of world trade. Europe used to run a massive silver deficit against China because that's all it would take at one point. We're not really interested in anything else because, to be honest, anything you can make or produce, we can make here. Why do we need to import stuff here? Just give us your silver. That's how it was. That's how it is going again, because they are now developing their economy. They are developing their nation. What we need to do is we need to sit down and say, hey, China, maybe you need to do things better while working with them. We need to sit down, negotiate with them, and not do it as individual countries, but as one world to say, hey, China, that's not on. If you do, maybe we'll put some sanctions on you until you start to correct that. Now, of course, that would affect, technically the world economy for a bit. But if we can put sanctions, or at least threaten sanctions for China to say, hey, ease up on Hong Kong, don't do that. And, the whole Xinjiang province with the Uyghur Muslim stuff, hey, let up on that, let international observers in, etc. There is stuff we can do. But of course, this whole idea that many of these conservatives, just like Liz Truss has, is that we can just put China back in its box and we can just ignore it. That is not the case. The view that many of these conservatives have over China is so simplistic and so like kid gloves. It doesn't reflect the reality of the world as it is at the moment. That's just how mad it is. But there you go. So there's that. So also, as President Xi Jinping proceeded to make himself president for life, clamped down on democracy and freedom of speech in Hong Kong, and has presided over human rights abuses in Xinjiang province. She said that there must be conservative leadership in the US once again to be bold enough to call out hostile regimes as evil and a threat. Again, we talked about that. Away from foreign affairs, she's argued that all of us in the West must halt the rot that we have allowed to develop within our own societies that attacks the Anglo-American values of patriotism, freedom, and family. You can always tell when someone has taken American money because they always say those three words: patriotism, freedom, family. That type of rhetoric does not echo well in certainly Europe, mostly here in the UK. Patriotism, while I would say that there is amount of patriotism in the UK, we are not obsessed as they are as Americans are. Certainly, as the American right is with that idea of patriotism. Freedom, well, we live in a pretty free society now. Of course, they're talking about all these threats on us. Well, they now want to turn back freedom of speech against people who they don't like. We see them attacking universities. We saw this heavily with protests in America on campuses against what Israel was doing in Palestine. We've seen these hard right American groups and these campus Republican groups go after and take photos of these students protesting, and then start producing billboards with those people's photos on and calling them all sorts of names and stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised if we see maybe a lot of lawsuits, maybe even some class action lawsuits from these students against these Republican led organizations. Would not surprise me if we did in the future. And of course, family, it's not really a thing. In America, in America, it's like, oh my god, patriotism, freedom, family. We all have families here in Europe as well, but we don't really see it as a thing. If that makes sense, compared to like the American view of that. So you can always tell, of course, Truss is on the American, dollar, taking those American dollars and being influenced by them. And I think, again, that's kind of wrong, because it wouldn't surprise me if some of these things were maybe, shall we say, going unreported, possibly. Like I say, it wouldn't surprise me at all if some of these things that she was doing with some of these American companies were going unreported. But we'll see. But you can always tell because, of course, patriotism, freedom, family, not really sort of a UK saying, not really a someone in Europe would really echo. That's an American thing. Now, of course, she continues. Whether it be the anti-capitalist excesses of extreme environmentalists or the radical woke agenda being promoted in our schools and on our campuses, again, very, very American there for those two things. We urgently need to counter these ideologies that undermine our way of life and give succor to our enemies. The future of the West depends on it. Oh boy. No. No, pretty much. Environmentalists saying, hey, maybe we need to rethink about our energy policies, the way that we have all this, crazy excess that we have. Maybe we need to rethink that. Maybe we need to think all these things. Maybe we think more green and make a transition to a more green economy. Oh, we can't do that. That would be anti-capitalist. And of course, again, radical woke agendas being promoted in schools and our campuses. What exactly is this quote radical woke agenda? Oh, it's this Marxism. What Marxism? Critical race theory? You mean that isn't really taught until like a university level? Yeah, this article was not targeted that she wrote to a European audience. No, Truss is being very, very much paid, I suspect, by right-wing American think tanks to put out this type of stuff. And of course, she's more than happy to take the money to do this type of stuff. We really shouldn't be surprised that all of a sudden her and Donald Trump are now best friends. Yay. Yeah, Liz Truss just once again proving that she is absolutely awful. And of course, she is an absolute opportunist. Of course, the second that she gets thrown out, she goes on like, the American tour circuit. She's again taking money, doing all these talks. Yeah. Yeah, she's being heavily influenced by right-wing think tanks. And that, from what she said there in that article, yeah, doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me in the least. But as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.